Hello guys, welcome back to my channel Camby's World, a guide to second mate orals. So today's topic is Rule 8 of collision regulations, and Rule 8 is action to avoid collision. So before starting this video, I would like to mention that I have personally prepared this presentation and have gone through a lot of collision regulation books, and after that I have prepared this presentation in depth. So today we are going to discuss Rule 8 in depth. Stay tuned with me till the end, and I hope you will like this video and it would be helpful to you all. So part A is: any action taken to avoid collision shall be taken in accordance with the rules of this part if the and shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be positive, made in ample time, and with due regard to the observance of good seamanship. So now here this part is talking about the behavior of the vessel, the behavior or the action which should be taken to avoid collision. What kind of behavior should be taken by the vessel? I mean, what should be the action? What kind of action should be there to avoid collision? So let's talk about the words which have been mentioned in this part. Now, rules of this part means the part which it is referring to is part B, steering and sailing rules, which are, as you know, from rule 4 to rule 19. And next is circumstances of the case. Circumstances of the case means the prevailing situations, that is weather, traffic, and visibility conditions. So these are the situation which should also be taken into account before taking any action to avoid collision, because these circumstances might vary from ship to ship and from place to place. And the action should be positive and made in ample time. Now here positive means that the action should be affirmative and it should be a correct action, and it should be made in ample time. That is, ample time means enough time, even if so that even if the action goes wrong, the navigator still has sufficient time to correct the action. That is the main meaning of this wordings. Now next is due regard to the observance of good seamanship. This means that the ordinary practice of seamanship should be also taken into account for taking any action to avoid collision, which is common sense basically. Let's move on to part 2. Now part 2 basically says that any alteration of course and or speed to avoid collision shall, if the circumstances of the case admit, be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel observing visually or by radar. A succession of small alterations of course and or speed should be avoided. Here the word large enough in this part means that big enough, that the action which we are taking should be big enough. This means that when we are taking any action by alteration of course, it should be large enough to be easily noticeable or easily observable by another vessel, in such a way that when we are taking action, our aspect should change, and when our aspect is changing, it should be clearly apparent to another vessel which is observing by keeping a lookout, or it can be also observing by it could also observe our change in aspect by radar. And also if we are reducing our speed, then the reduction should be such, the drop in the speed should be such that it should be clearly identifiable by the target vessel, which is again observing by radar or visually. And this rule also states that succession of small alteration of course and or speed should be avoided. This means that we should not alter our course or reduce our speed in successions. This means that we should not take action in such a way that might not be apparent, that is clearly visible to another vessel. For example, if we are if we are taking action by alteration of course, then our alteration of course should not be in 10 minutes we are altering to 5 degrees, then another 10 minutes we are again altering to 5 degrees. In such a way, this can cause confusion to the target vessel, as well as it is not advisable to do so. So the action should be apparent enough, that is clearly visible to another vessel which is observing visually or by radar. So this means that when we are taking action, we should not take small action in succession. We should take uh, a action which is clearly visible to another vessel. Now, moving towards part C says that if there is sufficient sea room, alteration of course alone may be the most effective action to avoid a close quarter situation, provided that it is made in good time, is substantial, and does not result in another close quarter situation. Here, this part of the rule is giving us the preference to alteration of course, provided that there is sufficient sea room, as alteration of course can be achieved in less time as compared to the change in speed. Yes, this is true that alteration of course is much more faster as compared to reduction in the speed, because we always have the helm in our hand. The navigator always has the helm in his hand and can alter his course whenever required. But suppose you are in open sea, and in open sea engine room is not manned. In that case, if you need to alter your course, in that scenario you have to first inform to the engine room, or you have to call an engineer. After that you can take action. So if you are going to take action by reduction of speed, then probably it is going to take a lot of time. So that is the reason that here in part C it is saying that if we are having sufficient sea room, then alteration of course is a preferred action. Next, also that action taken by alteration should be initiated in good time and should be substantial. That means that the timing should be correct, and we should take the action in good time, and it should be substantial. That means it should be clearly apparent and should be large enough. And taking action by alteration of course to keep clear should not result in danger with another vessel. This is the explanation to close quarter situation which is mentioned in the rule. That means that if there is a sufficient serum, only then we are supposed to take action by alteration of course. But if we have limitations, then it might not be possible that alteration of course is the only preferred action to take. Then in that case we can consider other actions to take. So this explains rule 8 part C. Now moving towards rule 8 part D, action taken to avoid a collision with another vessel shall be such as to result in passing at a safe distance. The effectiveness of the action shall be carefully checked until the other vessel is finally passed and clear. So every time when we make an alteration of our course and speed to avoid collision, we should be confident that the result will lead to a comfortable CPA. This is the meaning of this part, that whenever we are required to take action, we should take action in such a way that we should keep in mind that the CPA would change, it would increase, so that we are comfortable with it and we feel safe with it. And next it says that we need to check the course of action which we have taken, that is alteration or speed reduction, until the risk of collision is finally over and the vessel has passed us. So I hope this part is also clear. Now moving towards part E. So before starting part E, I know that a lot of candidates are much more confused with the part F of this rule. So I have gone through a greater depth and found a lot of material. And after comparing material from different websites and Colreg publications, I have made this video. So stay with me till the end, and I will properly explain part F of this rule. So let's proceed to part E. Part E says that if necessary to avoid collision or allow more time to assess the situation, a vessel shall slacken her speed or take all her way off by stopping or reversing her means of propulsion. So this means that slowing down or stopping the engines is always an option to avoid collision or to get more time to figure out what is the situation or what is the scenario. So we know that if we slow down our engines, we will slow down our speed. So slower will be the speed and more will be the time to assess the situation. Hence, we will have a greater CPA to the targets. And usually, reduction of speed is preferred in areas where there is limitation to the sea room. For example, in traffic separation scheme in narrow channel, and it could be also case in case of restricted visibility when there is a dense fog. So in those cases, it is required that we should reduce our speed, and we can also take all our way off. Now here, all our way take all our way off means that we can either stop our engines or we can also start the reverse propulsion of our engines to avoid collision. I hope this point is also clear. Now we shall proceed to part F. So part 1. Part 1 says that a vessel which by any of these rules is required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel shall, when required by the circumstances of the case, take early action to allow sufficient sea room for the safe passage of the other vessel. So, guys, first of all, I would like to mention that part F1 is a situation where risk of collision has not developed yet, and this is a pre-ROC situation. So let's understand this. First of all, we need to know the meaning of word impede. Now, I know most of you are confused between with this word impede. So there is a difference between impede and shall keep clear. You might have seen that impede word has been repeated in many other rules, such as in Rule 9, Part B, C, and D, 10 and 18. So impede is totally different from the other word, that is shall keep clear. These two words are totally different and have different meanings, and this part is basically where a lot of candidates get confused. So let's understand the meaning of impede the passage, shall not impede the passage. So this means that vessel shall not become an obstruction to the passage of other vessel and shall take early action before, that is before or pre-ROC has developed, to allow enough of sea room for safe passing. So impede, I think you have understood the meaning. Impede means to become an obstruction. So a vessel shall not impede the safe passage of other vessel uh, before ROC. So this means that this part, that is part F1, is only applicable for the vessels where risk of collision has not developed, that is before or pre-ROC. Now, by any of these rules, it is also mentioned in the part by any of these rules. This means that these rules which are mentioned in part F of the rule is only applicable to the rules in which non-impeding vessels are mentioned, which are Rule 9B, C, D, 10I, 10F, 18D1, 18E, and 18F. Now understand guys, by any of these rules, now these rule is being focused on the rules where impede word has been used. Impede word has been used in rules 9b part B, 9 part C, D, and rule 10 part I and F, and 18 part D1, 18E and 18F. So you can refer your Colrec book and find out the parts which I have mentioned. So these rule, so these part F is only applicable for these certain rules which are I have just mentioned to you. So let's move to part F2. Before moving to part F2, we should understand that part F1 is only applicable in three specific scenarios, that is in or near narrow channels, in or near a traffic separation scheme, and when we are encountering a CBD vessel. So as I mentioned you before that you can refer to the impeding vessels rule. You can refer to rule 9, 10 and 18 and find out the relevance of part F1 with the rules. So let's proceed to part F2. So, part F2, a vessel required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel is not relieved of this obligation if approaching the vessel so as to involve the risk of collision, and shall, when taking action, have full regard to the action which may be required by the rules of this part. So now, first of all, before starting the explanation, I would like to tell you guys that part F1 was applicable when the risk of collision was not present. Now, once the risk of collision had existed between two vessels, only then part F2 and part F3 are applicable simultaneously. So let's understand this rule. So it says that not relieved of this obligation, not relieved of her obligation. So this means that if risk of collision had existed, the vessel the which should not impede the safe passage of another vessel is still, it still has the duty to keep clear and stay out of the way of another vessel. So basically non-impeding, it is the duty of the non-impeding vessel to keep clear and stay out of the way of another vessel. The vessel can still take action to avoid collision, that is true, because it's clearly stated that it is not relieved of it, of this obligation. And next is, it also mentioned that when the vessel is taking action, it should have full regard to the action which may be required by the rules of this part. Now this we need to understand very clearly, because this is the point where candidates usually get confused. Now, non-impeding vessels shall at the same time, when taking action, keep regard with the rules of part B, steering and sailing rules. This means that if it is taking action, its action should be such that there should be no contravention with other rules given in part B. So guys, just try to understand that when it clearly states that when the vessel which is not required to impede the safe passage of another vessel is not relieved of her obligation, so right, then it is still obliged to take action. So it will take action, but when it is taking action, it should have full regard, that is full respect with the rules of this part, that is part B, steering and sailing rules. So this means that when the non-impeding vessel is taking action, its action should not contravene with the rules of the part B which are being mentioned. So this is the meaning of this part. I hope you are able to understand. I will also explain later it with an example, so for a better understanding. Because if you are not able to get it, so in that scenario, I also have an example at the last of this, at the last slide, which will make your confusions and doubt clear. So let's proceed to rule 8 part F3. So part F3 is says that a vessel, the passage of which is not to be impeded, remains fully obliged to comply with the rules of this part when the two vessels are approaching one another so as to involve the risk of collision. So this rule, this part also, as I have mentioned, that is applicable after the risk of collision had existed. So this rule simply means that the vessel whose passage is not to be impeded should comply with the rules of part B, that is steering and steering rules. And it is also evident that if there is risk of collision which has been existed, then as per rule 8F3, vessel the passage of which is not to be impeded can take action, but these actions should be in compliance with the rule of part B of the rules. That means that for example, for suppose you are a power driven vessel, and you have a vessel constrained by a draft at your port side, right? Now the vessel at your port side is coming, and as as you are the non-impeding vessel as per rule 18d1, so it is your duty as per rule 8f2 to not to impede the safe, as per rule 8f1, sorry, correction, to not the impede the safe passage of the CBD vessel. But still, after the risk of collision has existed and you have not taken the action, then as per rule 8f2, again it is your duty to keep clear as per rule 8f2. And also as per rule 8f3, it is the duty, it is the duty of the CBD vessel to take action, but these actions should be in compliance with the part B of the rules. We will understand it with an example. So this is the example which I was talking about to explain this rule. So as we can see here that this is an open sea, and we have a vessel constrained by her draft at our port side, and so this is case 1, and the range is approximately 8 miles, so it can be considered as a pre-ROC situation. So in this scenario, as we know that as per rule 18d1, any vessel shall not impede the safe passage of the vessel constrained by a draft. So it is our duty to not to impede the safe passage as per rule 18d1 and also as per rule 8f1, because 8f1 also says that vessel should not impede the safe passage and take early action to allow sufficient passing, to allow sufficient sea room for the safe passing. So here you can see that 18d1 and 8f1 are applicable, so our vessel should take early action to avoid the safe passage of vessel constrained by a draft. This is only for pre-ROC situation. Now let's see if we as an impeding vessel have not taken action, and if risk of collision had existed, then what will be the scenario? So now case 2, since we have not taken action and the risk of collision had existed, the power driven vessel, that is our own vessel, has not taken action and risk of collision has existed and the range is 4 to 6 miles. Now in this case, as per rule 8f2, our vessel is still obliged to take action, but we cannot alter our course to port, because as per rule 17, that is action by the giveaway vessel, in a crossing situation, uh, a giveaway vessel cannot alter a course to port for a vessel on her port side. Since CBD is also a power driven vessel, so we know that in this scenario, as per rule 17, we cannot alter our course to port as per rule 17. So rule 17 is a rule of part B. So in this way we are also complying with the rules of part B, which was mentioned in 8f2. So in this way, we are also complying with rules of part 8f2 and we are also obliged to take action. So in this scenario, we can either alter our course to starboard or we can reduce our speed. So it clearly explains that own vessel shall have full regard to the rules of this part, which I have just discussed. So now, as per Rule 8F3, Rule 8F3 applies to the CBD vessel, which is a stand-on vessel, and the CBD vessel should also take action in compliance with the rules of this part. Now, compliance refers to the stand-on vessel action, that is Rule 16. Since we are complying with Rule 16, so we will take action according to Rule 16. So with the rules of this part means here that Rule 16 stand on vessel action by the stand on vessel, right? So CBD vessel will take action according to Rule 16, but it will also comply with Rule 8F3. So both things are applicable on the same scenario. So we should also take action. So CBD vessel should also take action as per Rule 8F3, and it should also comply with Rule 16. So I hope this example is also clear to you guys, and I hope you like this video. And if you like this video, it is my kind request to like this video and subscribe my channel for more educational stuff. And I hope this rule was clear to you, and if still you have any doubt, please mention it in your comments. I will definitely try to clear all your doubts. Thank you.